Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on my channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be carried on from our latest video, giving you guys the best tips on who to unlock for the mythic and the legendary category. So I thought it wouldn't just be a good enough video just doing one of these rarities, because there's not enough brawlers really to cover just only legendaries or mythics. So I thought I'd do a 1 and 2 type of a video. We're going to be ranking them all kind of together because they do both cost quite a lot of your tokens. So before we jump into it, then make sure you're using the creator code. That'd be greatly appreciated. And without further ado, let's jump into it. Okay, so starting off with the worst brawler to unlock out of the legendaries and mythics. At number 17, we have Chester. So if we're talking about just primarily what brawlers are really fun, I think Chester could be a lot higher. So if you just play really casually, then Chester is okay to unlock. But if you want to get really good at the game and also just push trophies easily, then Chester isn't really that brawler. For me, he's just terrible right now in the meta. He has got a good fast movement speed and also some surprising supers, but most of those supers aren't really the greatest, and a lot of times a lot of different lanes just out damage him and just can outburst him pretty easily. So next up at number 16, we have Mortis. So Mortis, in terms of fun, probably is at the top of the rankings, and specifically when I go onto my other accounts as well, the game kind of pushes you to get Mortis. So it just goes to show that a lot of people really do enjoy playing him. But again, if you're looking to push trophies easily, I don't think Mortis is that brawler, unfortunately. There's just so many different counters out there. For me, he's just really frustrating to play. Can be fun at times, in Brawl, etc. But strictly in competitive, he's pretty bad. Next up at number 15, we have Byron. So Byron used to be always at the top of my rankings, but ever since I kind of nerfed his reload speed, I just think that Byron is just so easy to counter. In some scenarios, he can be pretty underrated, but more often than not, there's just so many brawlers that overwhelm him quickly, especially because it takes so long to charge his super as well. I just think there's a lot of better options than Byron. So next up at number 14, we have Sandy. So I thought Sandy would start to become meta just because of other brawlers that he counters became stronger, so he'd indirectly get stronger, if you get what I mean. But I don't think Sandy's really changed too much. Sandy itself, pretty easy to play, and in terms if you just want to have fun, Sandy is kind of sometimes that brawler. Me personally, I don't find Sandy fun, but I know a lot of you guys do like playing Sandy. But for me, in terms of competitive, he still just takes so long to get his super. More often than not, there's just a lot of different lanes that can get their super a lot quicker and make a bigger impact. So next up at number 13, we have Squeak. So Squeak is a bit of a weird brawler. I think in Power League, he's a much stronger brawler because as like a last pick, at least then you can see what brawlers everyone's playing, and then you're not going to get countered. But for me in the ladder, I just think it's too easily countered because of course you've got to wait for that kind of delay for the actual attack damage to go off. So I think brawlers can just close the gap to him pretty easily. Also, is really reliant on his residue gadget as well. But overall, I think it's pretty consistent across the board, and you can at least push him in a variety of game modes. But I still think it's too easy to counter. Next up at number 12, we have Willow. So she's somewhat one of the newer brawlers within the game right now. She's still really underwhelming for me. She kind of just fills the Barley role, but probably a bit worse, to be honest, just because you have to wait for that damage to kind of tick. A lot of times that's more often than not the reason why she dies. It's because she can't deal enough damage quickly. But she's underrated in some ways, especially when it comes down to a lot of unbreakable wall maps. And again, more often than not, Barley will be banned on certain maps like Hot Potato and Field Goal, and that's where Willow can come into play. So next up at number 11, we have Sprout. So Sprout is a brawler for me that only really pushable on like Bounty and Knockout, just because whenever I try and play him in like Brawl or Gem Grab or anything like that, just one aggro brawler on the enemy team will completely fold you. You just cannot deal with any sort of aggression, especially with just so much Mortis when you play ladder. It's just a field day for him on top of you. So for me, Sprout, unless you're really looking to play like competitive and Power League, it's not really worth unlocking. But again, if you more so play Bounty or Knockout, which probably not a lot of you do play, then Sprout is worth it. So next up at number 10, we have Amber. So Amber, I thought, especially with the Mythic gear, she was going to be one of the best brawlers in the game. But for some reason, the Mythic gear still seems pretty underwhelming. Maybe we just all overrated it a little bit, but I still think she's like pretty consistent across the board. I don't see her pop up in too many like maps in the game right now. Only really on like really passive maps, maybe like Ring of Fire, for example, or Gem Fort, especially when you get a lot of value out of your super. But overall, she's pretty easy to play. I'd say that she's pretty fun once you unlock her gadget. It gives her a little bit of an extra speed boost. Across the board, she's pretty good. So moving on to number 9, we have Leon. So Leon is one of my personal favorites in terms of legendaries. He's so fun to play, especially at lower levels. I think he's definitely that pop-off brawler, and he did receive like an indirect buff with the vision gear getting fixed, so he's starting to creep up in the rankings. I think it could be a lot higher, but for now, I think number 9 is pretty fair in terms of his use rate across the board. But he's, again, a brawler that you can go pretty much everywhere. I think everywhere except for highs, you have a case of going Leon. So in terms of versatility and how strong he is, he's definitely up there. Next up, as the 8th best brawler to unlock, it is Jean. So Jean, for me, I think at the highest level, is a brawler that you must absolutely unlock, but a lot of people always are pretty frustrated when they try and play Jean, especially for the first time. So again, I think it's more sort of a brawler that you want to start mastering when you start becoming really good at the game. So I think for now, I'd rather just go with a more safe option when it comes down to a mythic like Tara, for example, or even Mr. P. I'd rather go instead of Jean. But again, if it was strictly doing competitive, he probably would be like my number 2 pick. But for me, he's like the first pick when it comes down to knockout and bounty, and he's pretty decent when it comes down to other game modes like gem grab as well. But still, other mids I would still prefer. So Jean, a little bit of a weird one, especially because he's not really the best when it comes down to casual gameplay. So next up at number 7, we have Spike. So again, another favorite in terms of just the casual player base. Everyone loves Spike. You know, I've got like a million Spike plushies. I love Spike as well, and he's pretty easy to play, and that's why I just love playing him myself. He does a lot of damage. He is pretty squishy, but he's also a really versatile brawler. You can easily just go curveball and just pretty much play him everywhere. I think in every single scenario, except for knockout and bounty. Please do not go Spike on knockout and bounty. I see that mistake too many times. Other than that, he's a really consistent brawler, especially if you're looking to push on gem grab and Brawl across the board. I think he's really strong. So next up at number 6, we have Gray. So Gray, he's more of kind of the highest skill cap brawlers in this kind of category, just because for me, I think it takes a lot of skill to really assess who to teleport on and when to go in and when to not go in. And I think in the right setting, Gray can absolutely pop off. He's one of those brawlers that's really strong on like bounty and knockout, really consistent in Brawl, but he definitely needs his gadget. His walking cane gadget can just be so deadly. One of the best gadgets in the game so far. So for me, Gray's definitely worth unlocking. So next up at number 5, we have Tara. So Tara is a brawler that's not really reaching competitive levels at the moment, but I think when I'm playing ladder, Tara is just so easy to pick up and play, and she's really dominant since the recent buff. So she's definitely worth maxing out right now. She's got 2 really good star powers, 2 decent gadgets as well, and her gears are just really strong across the board. She's really only used in like Brawl and gem grab. You know, the odd time you might be able to pull her off in hot zone or like heist, for example, but so far I think she's just so dominant in gem grab and Brawl, and that's what most people play in 3v3. So next up, as the 4th best brawler to unlock, it is Mr. P. So Mr. P is a bit of a weird one. Me personally, I would actually put him a lot lower on the list, but for whatever reason, at the top of competitive right now, especially in Power League, everybody is picking Mr. P, especially at the early in the draft. So for me, Mr. P is only really like a counter pick, especially at the end of the draft, you know, to counter some squishier brawlers or to counter like B or Jean, for example. But he's been picked everywhere, and he's always been super versatile. Like, he's pretty decent across the board because he can kind of act as like that thrower. So for me, I mean, Mr. P is actually starting to become a lot stronger in the metas. So definitely unlock him right now. Moving on to the 3rd best to unlock right now, we have Max. So Max is still consistent across the board right now. She received 3 nerfs in the last set of balance changes, but I don't think that really pushed her back too much. She's really solid across the board. And again, if you really want to learn the highest skill cap brawlers in the game, a lot of people disagree with me, but Max, I think, is a brawler which is just good to learn in terms of like Brawl Stars IQs. So for me, I started improving in the game when I started playing in Max a lot, just because you have to be really aware of like positioning in terms of trying to be really aggressive as well. Max is always that playmaker. Even though you may not get like the most kills or the most damage, you're always like causing pressure on the enemy team. So for me, definitely unlock Max if you want to be a high skill player. Next up, as the 2nd best to unlock right now, we still have Meg. So Meg, for me, is still really dominant across the board. Even though she's received nerf after nerf since her rework, she's just so easy to pick up and play. So pretty much every single game mode, as long as the map isn't really closed off with a lot of unbreakable walls, and Meg's going to be able to pop off pretty easily. You know, she's solid in Brawl, solid as a gem carrier in gem grab. She can be pretty decent in heist and really strong in hot zone as well. And I've seen her played in bounty and knockout. I've even seen her played in shooting star, just because of how much HP and pressure she can get on the map. So really easy to pick up and play, and for me, really fun as well. And finally, moving on to the best brawler to unlock out of the mythics and legendaries, we have Crow. So Crow is just fantastic in this meta. Again, a brawler which a lot of people really do love playing in terms of legendaries. One of the most popular in the game. For me, he's one of the best in the game as well, even when it comes down to competitive, when it comes down to casual play as well. A lot of people like picking Crow. He's got 2 good gadgets, especially the slowing toxin one and the star power as well, really solid. And then he's got, you know, all the gears really do benefit him. The damage gear, the speed gear, the shield gear, and especially the mythic gear as well, all can play a part with Crow's kit. And then of course Brawl, gem grab, he's really solid. Heist is picked a lot, hot zone is picked a lot. As long as he's not really played it in the kind of long range maps like bounty and knockout, he's going to be dominated. That's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one. So I wanted to, you know, put out this video because still a lot of people haven't got every single brawler unlocked. Let me know if you find these videos useful and what other videos you want me to do. But as I was saying about like Mortis, for example, I went on multiple accounts and it's always that 50% off mythic brawler to begin with. So I feel like we kind of push you to go certain brawlers because they've got data to kind of represent what people play a lot and have fun with. So that's where you can see like Epic, for example. Maybe that's probably a lie for Epics because surely Agar should be near the front. But anyways, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time.